Christmas Eve, the city square blanketed in snow. Under the giant glowing Christmas tree, a little girl sat in a wheelchair, holding a small gift in her arms. Around her, the laughter of other children filled the air, but she sat silent, looking up at the lights. A cold wind blew past, her red scarf flying to the ground. A man stopped, picked it up, and knelt beside her. "Hey, kiddo, this tree's huge, isn't it?" The little girl looked up, eyes wet. "Nobody wished me Merry Christmas." He smiled, handing back the scarf. "Then let me be the first. Merry Christmas." From a distance, a woman in a white dress, the girl's mother, stood frozen, watching the man, someone she had once lost. Ethan Ward, 38 years old, single father, electrical engineer, lost his wife in an accident 4 years ago. Emma Hayes, 8 years old, CEO's daughter, paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident. Clara Hayes, 35 years old, CEO of a financial corporation, Emma's mother, too busy and full of guilt. Christmas Eve, Ethan brought his 7-year-old daughter Lily to the downtown square to see the Christmas tree. He wore an old coat. Lily held a bag of cookies they'd baked together to give to homeless people. Meanwhile, on the other side of the square, Emma sat in her wheelchair, wearing a white dress, her face sad. Her mother Clara was on an urgent phone call in the car. "Mom promised only 5 minutes, Emma said quietly, looking toward the tree. Clara frowned. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Mom has to finish this call." When Clara walked away, a strong gust of wind blew Emma's red scarf off her neck. Ethan walked by, picked it up, and knelt down. "Is this yours?" Emma nodded, replying softly, "Thank you." "No need to thank me, but why are you sitting here all alone?" "Mom's busy. I'm used to it." He paused. Lily tugged his hand, whispering, "Daddy, she doesn't have anyone to play with." Ethan smiled. "Then let's play together." He pulled from his bag a star-shaped gingerbread cookie. "For you. Homemade, probably not that good." Emma smiled slightly, taking a bite. "Better than the ones at my house." When Clara returned, the first thing she saw was a strange man sitting and talking with her daughter, who was laughing for the first time in months. But there was more to this moment than Clara realized. Ethan wasn't there by accident. He and Lily had been coming to this square every Christmas Eve for 4 years, ever since his wife Sarah died. It was their tradition, their way of honoring her memory by spreading kindness to strangers. Sarah had loved Christmas, had loved baking cookies, decorating the tree, singing carols off-key. When she died suddenly in a car accident, leaving him alone with a 3-year-old daughter, Ethan had wanted to give up on everything, especially Christmas. But Lily, even at 3 years old, had remembered. "Mommy liked making people happy at Christmas," she'd said, so they'd continued the tradition, not for themselves, but for Sarah, for the joy she'd believed in. Emma reminded Ethan of Lily at that age, vulnerable, trying to be brave, but so clearly lonely. His heart had broken a little when she said nobody had wished her Merry Christmas. What kind of world was this, where a child in a wheelchair sat alone under a Christmas tree while everyone else rushed past? "Do you like hot chocolate?" Ethan asked Emma. "I've never had it." "Never?" Lily gasped. "Daddy, we have to fix that." Ethan laughed. "We have a thermos. Would you like some?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really." He poured her a small cup, and when she took her first sip, her face transformed. Pure joy, simple happiness, the kind of thing money couldn't buy. "This is the best thing ever," she declared. "Wait until you try it with marshmallows," Lily said seriously. They talked for another 20 minutes. About the tree, about snow, about what Emma wanted for Christmas. She wanted to be able to run again, to play like other kids, to not be stuck in a chair. Ethan's heart ached. He couldn't give her that, but he could give her this moment, this conversation, this kindness. When Clara finally approached, her expression was a mixture of relief and something else, suspicion, curiosity, fear. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice sharp. Ethan stood, hands raised slightly in a non-threatening gesture. Just someone who noticed your daughter sitting alone. We were keeping her company. I don't need strangers interfering with my child. I understand, we were just leaving. But as he turned to go, Emma called out, "Wait, mister, can you come back tomorrow? You promised to tell me about the North Star." Ethan looked at Clara, seeking permission. She said nothing, her face unreadable. "If your mom says it's okay," he said carefully. Emma turned her pleading eyes to her mother. "Please?" Clara felt trapped, cornered by her daughter's first real smile in 6 months and this stranger who'd somehow accomplished what 100 doctors and therapists couldn't, made Emma happy. "We'll see," Clara said, which in parent language meant probably no, but sounded like hope to Emma. A street vendor later said, "I've been selling here for 5 years. I never saw that little girl smile until that night." Clara stepped forward, her voice somewhat stiff. "What are you doing with my daughter?" Ethan stood up, speaking gently. "Just talking. She has a beautiful smile." "I don't need strangers interfering," he nodded, leading his daughter away. But Emma called after him, "Mister, I still have half the cookie left. Come back tomorrow, okay?" Clara looked confused. That night, she listened to Emma talk endlessly about Mr. Ethan and little Lily. The next day, Clara had her driver take Emma to the square. The little girl waited all afternoon. Ethan actually came back, bringing another box of cookies. "You promised to share," he smiled. They talked again about the tree, snow, and the dream of running. When Clara stepped out, she was surprised to see him adjusting Emma's wheelchair. "Who gave you permission to touch? This chair is off axis. Could cause it to tip. I've fixed many types." "You're an engineer?" "Used to be. Now I'm just a father learning how to keep his kid from falling." Clara froze. But Ethan wasn't just fixing a wheelchair. He was studying it, understanding it, seeing problems that expensive medical equipment specialists had missed or ignored. "This brake mechanism is sticky," he noted, "and the footrest is uneven. Has anyone mentioned this? The medical supply company says it's normal wear and tear. It's a safety hazard. I can fix it if you'd like, free of charge." Clara bristled. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity. It's just fixing things. It's what I do." Over the following days, Emma insisted on going to the square every evening. Ethan helped her practice hand mobility exercises, while Lily told fairy tales. Each time, Emma's smile grew brighter. One day, Clara arrived early and watched from afar as Ethan lifted Emma onto a bench so she could be at eye level with the Christmas tree lights. The cold wind blew. He took off his coat and draped it over Emma's shoulders. Clara stood silently, an unfamiliar emotion rising in her chest. In the white snow, this man made her realize what she'd been missing. She watched as he patiently showed Emma how to make snow angels from her wheelchair, using her arms to create patterns in the snow beside her. Emma's laughter rang out, pure and unfiltered, a sound Clara realized she hadn't heard in over 2 years. Other children started to gather around, curious. Instead of staring at Emma's wheelchair with pity or awkwardness, they were fascinated by her snow angel technique. "Can you teach us?" a little boy asked. Emma looked uncertain, glancing at Ethan for reassurance. He nodded encouragingly. "Sure," Emma said, her voice gaining confidence. "You sit like this and use your arms really wide and—" Within minutes, a group of children were making snow angels alongside Emma, treating her not as different, but as the expert, the teacher, the friend. Clara felt tears freeze on her cheeks. This was what she'd been unable to give her daughter with all her money and connections: belonging, community, joy. But the relationship was complicated by more than just Clara's guardedness. Emma's father, Clara's ex-husband, had left them right after the accident. Couldn't handle having a damaged child, he'd said. The cruelty of those words still haunted Clara. She'd thrown herself into work, building her company bigger and bigger, as if success could fill the void where her marriage and her daughter's mobility used to be. She'd hired the best doctors, the most expensive therapists, bought the top-of-the-line wheelchair, the cutting-edge adaptive equipment, Money was the only thing she knew how to give, and yet her daughter had been unhappy, withdrawn, losing hope, until a stranger with a bag of homemade cookies showed up. "Why do you keep coming back?" Clara finally asked Ethan one evening after Emma had been picked up by the driver. "Because your daughter asked me to." Most people would have said no, walked away. Why didn't you? Ethan looked at the Christmas tree, its lights reflecting in his eyes. "My wife died 4 years ago. Christmas Eve, actually. Car accident. She was bringing home presents." Clara's breath caught. "After she died, I wanted to hate Christmas. Wanted to skip it forever. But my daughter, she remembered how her mom loved the season. How she baked cookies for neighbors, volunteered at shelters, spread joy wherever she went. So we kept doing it. For her memory." "I'm sorry, don't be. It's not about the loss anymore. It's about what we do with what's left. And what's left is the opportunity to make someone else's day a little brighter. That's what Sarah would have wanted." Clara felt tears threatening. When was the last time she'd thought about making someone's day brighter? She spent her days in boardrooms, making deals, maximizing profits, all for Emma, she told herself. To provide for Emma. But Emma didn't need more money. She needed her mother. And she needed people like Ethan who saw her as a person, not a tragedy. "Emma talks about you constantly," Clara admitted. "About you and Lily, about the stories you tell, the cookies you share. She's happier than she's been in years. She's a special kid, brave, smart, funny. She deserves to smile." "I can't remember the last time I made her smile." Ethan's expression softened. "It's not a competition. You're her mother. She loves you. But maybe she just needs to see you smile too." The words hit Clara like a physical blow, because she couldn't remember the last time she'd really smiled either. Not since the accident. Not since her ex-husband left. Not since her whole life became about survival instead of living. Someone who recorded a video said, "The janitor fixes wheelchair on Christmas Eve video got 3 million views." The father in the clip only said one thing: "I didn't fix the chair. I fixed the smile." Christmas arrived, but an unexpected blizzard lasted. The whole city lost power. Ethan took Lily to a nearby church for shelter. Meanwhile, Clara was stuck in her office building, Emma at home with the housekeeper. When the phone lost signal, Emma worried, "I'm scared Mom is lost." The housekeeper reassured her, "Mom will come home." Outside, the storm intensified. Ethan saw the Hayes house lights flickering. He remembered Emma mentioning her mother always forgot to check the backup generator. He left Lily at the church, grabbed a flashlight, and trudged through the snow to the mansion. When he arrived, he discovered smoke coming from the garage. The generator was about to explode. He rushed in, cut the circuit breaker, and opened windows. At that moment, Clara had just arrived home, panicking when she saw him carrying Emma out of the house. You saved my daughter?" He just replied softly, "No, she saved herself. She called for Mom before I even got here." She hugged her daughter, sobbing. Emma looked up, trembling. "Mom, I want him to stay." Clara looked over, her expression changing. "Do you know what day it is today?" "I do. My daughter's birthday, and someone's Christmas needs to be warmer." He smiled, speaking softly. "Merry Christmas," she replied, her voice breaking. For the first time, I feel like those words are real. But the rescue was more complicated than it seemed. When Ethan had arrived at the mansion, the front door was locked. He'd heard Emma's voice, faint and scared, coming from inside. The backup generator in the garage was malfunctioning, carbon monoxide seeping into the house through the ventilation system. He'd smashed a window, cutting his hand in the process, and found Emma in her bedroom, already drowsy from the gas. The housekeeper had passed out in the kitchen. He'd carried Emma out first, her wheelchair too bulky to navigate quickly. Then he'd gone back for the housekeeper, dragging her to safety just as Claire's car pulled into the driveway. By the time emergency services arrived, Ethan had saved 2 lives, but all he cared about was making sure Emma was okay. "Is she breathing normally? Does she have a headache? Nausea?" he asked the paramedics urgently. "She's fine, thanks to you. Another 10 minutes and..." "Don't," Clara interrupted, her voice sharp with horror. Don't finish that sentence. The paramedics loaded Emma into an ambulance as a precaution. Clara insisted Ethan come with them. I need to get back to Lily, he protested. She's waiting at the church. We'll send someone. Please, Emma needs. Clara couldn't finish. Her carefully constructed walls were crumbling. At the hospital, while doctors examined Emma, Clara and Ethan sat in the waiting room. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled. His hand was bandaged from the broken window. They looked like survivors of something more than just a storm. Why did you come? Clara asked finally. Why risk your life for a child who isn't yours? Because she is mine. She became mine the moment she asked me to come back, the moment she trusted me. That's what makes someone yours, the trust, not blood, not DNA, just caring. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Just be there for her. That's all she wants. Clara's phone, now recharged, started buzzing with messages from board members, business partners, clients. Urgent matters that required her attention even on Christmas Eve during a crisis. She looked at the phone, then at the door where her daughter was being examined. Then at Ethan, this stranger who'd become something more. She turned off the phone. What are you doing? Ethan asked. Choosing, Clara said simply. For the first time in 3 years, I'm choosing my daughter over everything else. When Emma was cleared by doctors, just mild carbon monoxide exposure that would resolve with oxygen therapy, she asked for both her mother and Ethan. They sat on either side of her hospital bed, this unlikely trio connected by chance and Christmas and courage. Mr. Ethan, Emma said, her voice still weak but determined. Thank you for saving me. You're welcome. But Emma, you saved yourself. You were brave. You stayed calm. You did everything right. I thought about what you said, about being strong even when you're scared. You remembered. I remember everything you tell me. Clara watched this interaction, seeing her daughter animated, engaged, alive in a way she hadn't been since the accident, and she understood with painful clarity that she'd been so focused on fixing Emma's body that she'd neglected Emma's soul. The blizzard continued through the night. The hospital was overcrowded with people who'd lost power, needed warmth, or had accidents in the storm. But in Emma's room, it felt like a safe haven. Lily was brought to the hospital by a church volunteer. When she saw her father, she ran to him crying, Daddy, I was so scared. I know, baby. I'm sorry. I had to help someone. Did you save them? I tried. Emma spoke up from her bed. He saved me. Lily looked at Emma, then at her father, then back at Emma. Good. That's what daddies do. They save people. The simple wisdom of children. It made all 3 adults smile through their tears. The rescue worker later recounted, the CEO hugged him in the snow, saying thank you over and over. The man just smiled and said, I did it for my daughter. No need for anyone to remember my name. A week later, the news article, Man Saves CEO's Daughter During Blizzard, spread across the internet. Clara came to find him, bringing flowers and a small card. I owe you something. No, we both owe our daughters because they taught adults how to care. From then on, Clara launched the Lily's Star Fund, supporting children with mobility disabilities. Ethan helped design a new wheelchair for Emma, lightweight, controllable with one hand. The day Emma was able to push the chair herself, Clara broke down crying. You did what I couldn't, believing she could do it. Ethan smiled, because I saw it in her eyes. But the fund was more than just a philanthropic gesture. It became Clara's new purpose. She stepped back from her CEO duties, appointing a trusted COO to handle day-to-day operations while she focused on Lily's Star. They helped dozens of children in that first year. Custom wheelchairs designed by Ethan, physical therapy programs, adaptive sports leagues, art classes where kids could express themselves regardless of mobility. Emma became the face of the foundation, not in an exploitative way, but as genuine representation. She spoke at fundraisers, not from a script, but from her heart, about what it felt like to be stuck, about what it felt like when someone saw her as more than her wheelchair. Mr. Ethan didn't see my chair first, she told a room full of donors. He saw me, and that made all the difference. The organization grew beyond anything Clara had imagined. Other parents reached out, desperate for help, for hope, for someone who understood. And Clara, who'd spent years building a financial empire, realized this was the first thing she'd built that actually mattered. Ethan became the foundation's chief engineer, designing adaptive equipment that was both functional and affordable. He worked closely with Emma, who tested every prototype and gave brutally honest feedback. "This brake is still sticky," she'd say. "You're right, back to the drawing board. And this footrest squeaks." Noted. Their relationship evolved from helper and help to true collaboration. Emma wasn't a charity case. She was a partner, a consultant, a friend. Lily and Emma became inseparable. Two girls who should have come from different worlds but found common ground in creativity, kindness, and cookies. They had sleepovers where they'd stay up late telling stories. They celebrated birthdays together. They navigated the complexities of childhood as a team. The transformation in both families was remarkable. Ethan, who had been barely surviving financially, now had stable employment and purpose. But more than that, he had community. He'd spent 4 years in isolation, focused solely on Lily, afraid to let anyone else in because losing Sarah had hurt so much. Clara had opened doors he didn't know existed, not just professional opportunities, but emotional ones. She'd shown him that loving again didn't mean forgetting, that building a new life didn't erase the old one. And Clara, who had measured her worth in quarterly profits and stock prices, had discovered that her true value lay in the lives she touched. Every child who received an adaptive wheelchair, every family who found support through Lily's star, every moment of joy she witnessed. These were her real achievements. She'd been promoted, awarded, featured in business magazines, but none of those accolades meant as much as the thank you cards from parents, the drawings from children, the slowly growing confidence she saw in Emma every single day. One evening, 6 months after the blizzard, Clara invited Ethan and Lily to dinner at her home. Not the mansion, but a smaller house she'd bought, more modest, more like a home. "I'm downsizing," she explained. "The mansion was for image. This is for living." They ate a meal Clara had cooked herself, which was only slightly burned, and laughed about it. After dinner, Emma showed Ethan her progress with the new wheelchair. She could navigate, turn, even do small wheelies. "Look, Mr. Ethan, I'm getting so good." "You're amazing, Emma, truly amazing. It's because you believed I could." Later, while the girls watched a movie, Clara and Ethan sat on the back porch, sipping coffee, watching snow fall gently in the yard. "A year ago, I was miserable," Clara said. "Successful, but miserable. I measured my worth in dollars and deals, and I was failing the only person who mattered. You're not failing anymore, thanks to you. No, thanks to Emma. She's the one who wanted to be seen, who refused to give up, who reminded us all what matters." Clara reached over and took his hand, not romantically necessarily, but with connection, with gratitude, with the beginning of something neither of them could name yet. "Merry Christmas, Ethan." "Merry Christmas, Clara. From this day forward, I choose to look at each other a little longer. I will live with kindness." 1 year later, they met again under the old Christmas tree. Emma pushed her chair there herself. Lily ran beside her. Clara brought a box of gingerbread cookies, laughing. "I can make them now," Ethan teased. "Probably not as good as mine, though." "Then let's share." They laughed together. When the clock struck midnight, snow fell gently. Emma looked up at the tree and said, "I know my wish from last year came true." "What was it, sweetheart?" "That Mom wouldn't be busy, that you wouldn't leave, and that I'd have a friend." Clara took Ethan's hand, speaking softly. "This Christmas, thank you for stopping under that tree last year." He replied, "I didn't stop. My daughter pulled me there." But the story continued beyond that moment. 2 Christmases later, Lily's Star Foundation had expanded to 12 cities. Hundreds of children had received adaptive equipment, therapy, and most importantly, dignity. Emma was 11 now, thriving in school, captain of the adaptive basketball team, an artist whose paintings sold to fund the foundation. She still used a wheelchair, would probably always use one, but it no longer defined her. It was just part of her, like her brown eyes or her infectious laugh. Clara and Ethan had been dating for a year. Not rushed, not forced, but natural. They'd bonded over shared values, shared purpose, and two daughters who decided they were sisters long before the adults figured out they were family. On Christmas Eve, 3 years after their first meeting, they returned to the square as they did every year. But this time they weren't just visiting. They were unveiling something, a bronze statue of a man kneeling beside a little girl in a wheelchair. Simple, beautiful, real. The plaque read, "In memory of kindness, December 24th, where it all began." Emma gave the unveiling speech, now confident and poised. 3 years ago, I sat under this tree alone. I thought nobody cared. I thought I was invisible. And then a stranger stopped. He saw me, not my wheelchair, not my limitations, me. And he said 2 words that changed everything: Merry Christmas. She paused, looking at Ethan and Clara, standing together with Lily. Those 2 words taught me that we're never really alone, that kindness is real, that strangers are just family you haven't met yet. This statue isn't about one moment. It's about every moment when someone chooses to see another person, to stop, to care. The crowd applauded. Local news covered it. The story went viral again, this time with an update. 3 years later, here's what happened to the CEO's daughter and the single dad. But for Ethan, Clara, Emma, and Lily, the viral aspect didn't matter. What mattered was standing together, watching snow fall on the statue, knowing they'd built something lasting. Not just a foundation or a friendship, but a family. "Do you think people will remember?" Lily asked her father. "Some will, some won't. But the people it touches will carry it forward. That's how kindness works. It multiplies." Emma wheeled closer to the statue, running her hand along the bronze. "This is us. This is our beginning." Clara knelt beside her daughter. "And every day after is our continuing." As the crowd dispersed and the square grew quiet, the 4 of them stood together under the lights, under the tree, under the snow, where a lonely girl had once sat invisible, where a kind man had once stopped to say hello, where 2 words had changed everything. Merry Christmas. If you believe stories of healing like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to NL Touching Stories. We tell stories that should never be forgotten.